Hello everyone, this is Dr. Robin Brewer. I am going to do a review of the IEP process before we actually start looking at the forms. So first we'll do this overview, then we'll look at the CDE webpage, we'll take a look at the IEP document, and we'll do that piece by piece. So there'll be several videos along the way. So we're going to create a standards-based IEP. Remember, we're going to have high expectations for all students. We're going to presume competence. We're going to make decisions based on data, and we're going to link it to the general education standards. So the first step in developing your IEP is figuring out what standards you're going to be working on. Find out what academic areas the student is going to be learning, and include the standards so that you know what areas you're going to be working toward. What data do you have that gives you information about the student and their levels of performance? You might have evaluation data, you might have classroom data. Then there's step 3, which is your present level of performance. So based on the data, where are the students functioning, their achievement and functional levels. So we want to document what their present levels of performance are and what their needs are. Remember, in needs, there's never a person listed. We're never going to list the person needs a one-to-one paraprofessional. What we want to list is what the student actually needs, and then later on, personnel is determined. Step 4 is developing your measurable annual goals and objectives. Then we're going to report progress, so we have to take data on the goals and objectives, and we have to report the progress to the parents throughout the year. Then we're going to have specially designed instruction. So what instruction is the student going to receive that's going to help them learn their goals and to be able to compensate for the special needs that they have? And then we're going to be collecting data throughout the instruction, and we're going to assess. And that will lead us back to the beginning, and we go at this process year after year. So educators must understand the gen ed curriculum. What is the content? What's this? Looking at the scope and sequence. If you don't know how math is taught, you need to work with a math teacher and find out what is the sequence of the math skills the student needs to learn. What curriculum are they going to be using, and how can you use it so that the student's level and the academic content matches their level? Keeping in mind that we want to presume competence. We want to presume that they can learn the content. So focus on the standards at the student's grade level. We have to know what they're going to be taught, the materials that are going to be used, the products, how they're going to learn, and we're going to have to figure out what accommodations or modifications they're going to need. You have to have an assessment plan that looks at different ways to measure the student's growth. We can look at norm reference test, individual inventories, observations, and work samples. So you're going to determine your present level function. Assessment must address 3 critical areas: what the child has achieved academically, how the child's disability affects their involvement and progress in the general ed curriculum, and how the student's social and behavioral development affects his or her academic and functional performance. And you'll be covering that with in your EDSE 321 class in the advanced assessment. Now, developing annual goals. So this is what we're going to spend a majority of the time on the videos. And that is, your goals need to be designed to meet the needs of the student. So we have to help them make progress in the general ed curriculum by looking at the goals. So what goals can we develop that are going to help them to be able to progress in the general ed curriculum? They may be in science and social studies and PE and music and computers, but what's going to help them progress? Is it a literacy goal? Is it a behavior goal? Is it a numeracy goal? What is it that we want to focus on their goals so that they can progress in the general ed curriculum? So how does the IEP describe the achievement of standards. We're going to include a description of how the child's progress is going to be measured. So how are we going to take data on their goals? When and how will those results be taken? And then when will they be reported to the parents, the family members? And then how are we going to document the progress? And how are we going to make sure that we know when they have learned a skill? We have to figure out how to document that. The IEP contents. An IEP must contain an explanation of the extent to which the child will not participate with non-disabled peers in the general ed curriculum. We really have to talk about why we're not allowing them to learn with their general ed peers. And we have to have a justification to remove the child from the general education classroom. One example is that in order to meet the IEP goals, the student needs an intensive level of instructional support delivered individually or in small groups. So we might say that this student is in 6th grade and they're reading at a pre-primary level, and so they need a real intensive level of support. And so we're going to pull them out for a short period of time. Doesn't mean you have to do it all day. Could just be for 30 to 45 minutes at a time. So keep it in mind when the student is receiving instruction in a more restrictive setting that the focus should be on achieving the knowledge and skills in the general ed curriculum. So writing standards-based goals and objectives. Identify appropriate goal components. So the first one is by what date, given under what condition. When I look at IEP goals, a lot of times what I find missing is the condition. So given a 3rd grade reading passage, etc. Who, so always list the student, does what, so what are their observable behavior. We'll read a 3rd grade oral reading passage. How much, what's their level of mastery, 95% accuracy within 5 minutes, and how often, 4 out of 5 opportunities, could be 3 consecutive days. So what do you want that to look like? And how is it measured? It's recorded on a running record for that one. So goal writing. Remember the SMART goals: specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely. So goals. An annual goal is a statement of what an individual should be able to complete in 1 year. So think about the student. What can they get done in 1 year? Clear and understandable, avoids excessive educational jargon, very specific, and linked to their prioritized needs. Think of it this way. If the student moves to another school, can someone else pick up that IEP, look at the goals, and say, I can implement this. I understand it, and I have the materials to do it. So 1, never list a curriculum material in your IEP goal. You might say we're going to use a reading curriculum that addresses phonemic awareness, vocabulary, comprehension, and we're going to supplement that with different kinds of materials. Don't use the name of a specific curriculum. Get the biggest bang for your buck when you're writing your goals. You want to work together. So your SLP is going to write a goal. Well, see if you can figure out ways to combine it so that you're writing transdisciplinary goals. These are goals that you'll work on, the speech pathologist might work on, the general ed teacher might work on them. So this one is after reading a passage adapted to Billy's grade level, Billy will answer 4 out of 5 WH comprehension questions, that's the teacher's goal, by circling the answer from 3 choices. So we can look at the comprehension questions, which is what I want Billy to learn, and then the WH questions are what the speech pathologist wants the student to learn. So we're combining our forces. As an example, look at the condition. Given all the letters of the alphabet, now the behavior, Jenny will identify all the letters of and produce the sounds associated with each consonant and 2 sounds for each vowel. With 95% accuracy over 2 consecutive weeks, within 1 academic year, the criteria, and then our unit of measurement, which you will need for your IEP, is what are we going to count? We're going to count the correctly identified letters and sounds. So objectives and benchmarks then. We want to look at an objective or a benchmark as what a student can master in 3 to 4 months. So I think Jenny can learn 6 letters within the first quarter. So my objective would be, given 6 letters of the alphabet, Jenny will identify by pointing to the letter and saying the name of the letter and its corresponding sound or sounds within 2 minutes with 90% accuracy 4 out of 5 times. So I think that she can learn the letters and the sounds within 3 to 4 months. The second quarter, she's going to boost that up to 12 letters, and we're going to give her 4 minutes to do that. And then the third quarter, she's going to have 18 letters, and then hopefully by the end of the fourth quarter, she'll be able to name all the letters and say their corresponding sounds. And we need to identify when we're going to take data, and I just have that we're going to take it one time every day to make sure she's working on it every day, and we're going to track her progress. Next, we're going to look at accommodations. Accommodations refers to the actual teaching supports and services the students are going to receive. So accommodations, remember, just level the playing field, doesn't change the content, and examples of that are listed below. Modifications, on the other hand, are changes actually made to the curriculum. So it could be in a 5th grade science class, the students working on identifying and sorting living and non-living items. Or in social studies, are going to identify Colorado on the map and label 5 cities. And the students in the typical class are learning about all the states. Which assessment do we look at? There is an eligibility worksheet that we can look at for determining a student's eligibility for the co-alt. Looking at the worksheet for determining if a student can take the alternate assessment, we can go down this quickly. I've linked it to Blackboard. So we have to determine that the student does have an IEP for criterion 1. For 2, the student has a cognitive disability. So how did you determine that? If they have an ID label, as long as they have that, you can move on. And then criterion 3 is they have a significant cognitive disability. So they have to be significantly below age expectations, even with program modifications, adaptations. So we have that. And the school psychologist presents evidence that the student's cognitive and adaptive functioning is consistent with that of a student with a significant cognitive disability. So if we have all those, then the student can take the alternate assessment. If the student is found to meet those criteria, they would be taking the DLM assessment. If not, they'll be taking PARCC, or CMAS as it's referred to. If you want to look at the standards with the EEOs or the ERCs, it's the full list of standards. I put the link here so that you can go directly to it. So if you have students with special needs and they're not going to be taking the alternate assessments, you can still use the standards at this link, because it's just the regular academic standards with the EEOs on the bottom if you so need them. So after we determine what assessment, we're going to look at services. So we're going to look at where the student's going to receive services, who the service provider is going to be, and what kind of specialized instruction they're going to be receiving. So that's where that goes. Don't forget to do that on your IEP. Some people forget that. And then we look at placement. We have to consider at least 3 different options when we're talking about placement. You document the discussion you have at the meeting, you select your placement, and then the final piece of the puzzle of developing the IEP is prior written notice. In the document, the very end, you have to document anything that was discussed that you rejected. So say the parent wanted a one-to-one paraprofessional and you've really rejected that. You don't feel that the student needs that. You can put a description there of what you discussed and how you're going to be providing services to the student. And then the case manager signs that. And then if the parent has any problems after the IEP is completed and they receive a copy, it's the case manager that they contact to let them know that they're not pleased with something in the IEP. That's it for this PowerPoint, and we're going to go over to the IEP now.